I should probably start this video by saying everything I'm about to say is unfiltered and I'm not following a script or anything. This is just coming from my heart. And it's regarding the experiences that I have with the Dark Souls games and Souls games in general. And it's mostly due to one friend in particular who I won't name. But to be honest, I would not be here talking about Dark Souls if it wasn't for him. And that's a complete fact. I probably would have eventually gone to playing a Dark Souls game. No doubt about that. But he was the one that made me love Dark Souls. Because he was talking about it all the way back in early to mid 2019. He was like, oh yeah, you should go get a PlayStation so that you can play Dark Souls with me. I said, alright, I'll get one. Because I was planning on getting a PlayStation anyway. Because the only console I really had in my own room at the time was an Xbox 360 and a Wii. Because my sister... Well, me and my sister, we shared an Xbox One. And it was in the living room, and I didn't really like always having to go down like into the living room just so I could play games. And we didn't really have many games that interested me on the Xbox 360, and the only one I think I really played was Minecraft. And on the Wii, well, honestly, I probably played like Wii Party by myself or something. So it was brilliant when I got my PlayStation, you know. I spent a few weeks just on a few new games that I got. And I think on my birthday, exactly, I got Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy, I got FIFA, and then I got Overwatch, because I knew that my friends around that time were playing a lot of Overwatch, so then I got Overwatch so that I could play with them. And I was mostly just spending all of my time playing Overwatch for the first few weeks I had my PlayStation. And then one day I saved up enough money, a couple of weeks after I got my PlayStation, and then I went to CEX. That's how I say it. It's the used game, device, movie, second-hand shop. And that's basically the best way I could describe it. So I was in there having a look for Dark Souls 3, because that was the one my friend wanted me to play with him. However, they didn't have it in stock. On that day I went to go buy it. However, they did have Dark Souls 2. I rang my friend up in the shop, actually, and then I said if Dark Souls 2 was any good. And he goes, I don't know, man, I would rather you get Dark Souls 3, but if you really want to, you can get Dark Souls 2. I was like, oh great, I'll get Dark Souls 2 then. Same day, I popped into my PlayStation, and I spent, what was it, 6 or 7 hours in Forest of the Fallen Giants, not having a clue what I was supposed to do. Yeah. By that point, I pretty much just binned Dark Souls as a whole, because I had no clue how the game worked. Because my friend wasn't really helping, because he didn't particularly like Dark Souls 2. I actually remember I would try and kill enemies using a broken straight sword. Because I had no clue how the weapon system worked in that, and I didn't understand about how weapons degraded and all of that, because I never really played games like that. So that was all new to me, and I was like, no, I don't like this. And then I just left it on my shelf. However, I did still want to play Dark Souls 3. So around 2 weeks after that encounter, I got Dark Souls 3 with some Christmas money I had. And the rest is history, to be honest. I did make an account on Dark Souls 3 called Kirby Ting Fan 100. And I got up to around Undead Settlement, I want to say, on that account. And then I got to see Siegward. And because I thought he was an enemy, my friend didn't mention that he was an NPC. I just full on started trying to kill him because I thought he was just going to be like an easy normal enemy for from the next area. And then I just couldn't beat him because obviously he was an NPC. He was quite strong. So then I abandoned the account, and then I made the account I'm talking on right now, which is my No Face Flanders account, which has around 540 hours on it. I spent around 2 hours on my Kirby Ting Fan 100 account. And, you know, again, I was starting to get my head around how the combat system works and all of that. But I just kind of had to start from fresh on my own, on my No Face Flanders account. And I did. And it really did teach me how to learn the mechanics of the Souls games. Because not only did it help me get through the entire game on my first playthrough, which took me around a month to beat, but it also just transferred over into a lot of other games. Like, I was playing Kenna Bridge of Spirits around Christmas time last year, because I got it with some money, and the combat felt fairly similar to as if I was playing the Dark Souls game, if that sounds weird or anything. Because honestly, because of my experience of playing all of the Souls games, it really did help me out. My skills transferred over. And I couldn't have been more glad for the fact Souls did that for me. Now, I should probably move on to the other Souls games, if I'm talking about all of them. So, the next Souls game I played after Dark Souls 3 was Dark Souls 2, actually, because I saw I still had Dark Souls 2 on my shelf, and I thought to myself, well, you know, I might as well give this one another chance. It can't be as bad as I remember it, and it wasn't. You know, because I created a new account which related to the name Flanders, and that just became a theme in all future Souls games. So now all of my main accounts normally have Flanders associated with them. So I made my Dark Souls 2 account, and I played through the game like that. I don't remember how long exactly it took to beat. I think I beat Dark Souls 2 around the time the UK went into lockdown for the first time. And I tell you, Dark Souls 2 kept me occupied from about early February to late April, early May, before I went back to Dark Souls 3 for a bit. Because I was just coming up with all of these new build ideas, and there was so much variety that I could do in Dark Souls 2, and if I had any footage surviving from any of the boss fights I did, I would show it. But, you know, when I mean, around late 2020, my PS4 hard drive got corrupted, and then I lost all of my photos and trophies and that. Well, trophy screenshots. So I had to get a new hard drive implemented in, and then I've basically had to... I think I just had like a dodgy unit, which is unlucky because I lost a lot of cool pictures and memories that I made. But life goes on, you know. I can always make new memories. Now, as we come to Dark Souls 2, what I really liked about Dark Souls 2 was just how different it was. It felt so fresh after playing Dark Souls 3, because obviously Dark Souls 2 is the black sheep of the Dark Souls trilogy. It's got a very unique combat system. And also just the way the attacking and all of that works, because it feels it's just different, and that's what makes me like Dark Souls 2. So, while that kept me all occupied in that, I did still occasionally play Dark Souls 3, but, you know, I didn't really buy any of the DLC. However, DLC in Dark Souls 2, because it was already in Scholar of the First Sin, I would play through all of the DLC on that first, and then I would go to Dark Souls 3, and then I think on the 1st of May, that same year I bought the Ring City, and that's the only DLC for Dark Souls 3 that I've bought. If you don't actually believe it, I've never played through Ashes of Ariandel before. Because I've never bothered buying it, because there wasn't really anything from the DLC that I wanted. But then I remembered, you know, it's not just about the items. Because that was my main focus, because the reason I got Ring City was so that I could use Lido's Great Hammer, because I thought, oh my god, that weapon looks sick. But my friend wasn't willing to drop one for me, even though he had both DLCs, and had beaten the game numerous times. Prick. So I thought, well, I might as well buy it for myself, and then I did. And I used that weapon a lot. But then I realised it wasn't as good as I thought it was, because at the end of the day, it's a great hammer, and most great hammers, in my experience at least, they aren't the greatest. Which is an oxymoron against their name being Great Hammer, I think. Well, the DLC, on my first playthrough, I can't exactly remember what I was feeling, you know. Because also around that time, I wanted to start playing through Dark Souls 1. Because, bear in mind, I had not played the original Dark Souls at all by this point. I'd only played through Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 2. And, to be honest, right, playing all of the Souls games during the lockdown, it gave me, like, a sense of worth in the world. Because all I felt like I was meant for in that time period was just working and doing any online work that I was assigned by my teachers and by anyone that I had to do, and then I would do the best I could on my schoolwork, and then I would just hop on Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls 2 and then do some arena duels. I mean, obviously I'd barely get any because most people were doing work and all of that stuff that people do. And then one day, actually, during all of these fights, I met a YouTuber called Illegally Irish. Because I was doing a fight club on Dark Souls 3. I don't remember what weapon or anything I was using. But I remember that I was kind of having a bit of a... I don't know, I was just kind of in a bad mood that day. And then he, like... I think he must have, like, thrown a fireball at me while I was changing one of my weapons and it killed me. And then I just pulled the plug because I was so fed up with everything. And then, but what's so nice about him was he messaged me after the fight asking if it was okay if he put it in his YouTube video, and of course I was completely okay with that, and it just opened a new world, like a new community for me to talk to, which also revitalized my love for Souls. Because I was feeling a bit of a slump because of how much I'd been playing Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 2. Illegally Irish, because he used to do live streams where he would do fight clubs or Soul Level 1 runs, whatever it may be. I would just watch every single one. And I would do every single one. It was a lot of fun. And I still wish I could do those all over again, but obviously he's busy with his life and all that. And he's made that clear. Because he's pretty much... he's really slowed down on the uploads. He only does one every couple of months now. Although the last thing I heard of him was that he was building a PC with, he was saving up money from here to build a PC and use different parts and all of that. So I haven't had an update on that in easily a year and a half. But who knows? It would be brilliant to have him come back like consistently. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Either way, he changed my view on playing Souls games to a degree, because he taught me just to not take it as seriously. Because, you know, I used to be a very competitive person, and I would beat myself up over every single mistake that I made in a fight, and I would just stress myself out and start shouting and getting hissy-fissy. I would just get really angry at the game. And then watching Irish's videos after I lost a fight in a fight club and I was beating myself up over it, it made me realise the mistakes that I'd made. And I taught myself, be more like Irish. If you want to show him some love, you're more than welcome to go to his channel. I'm going to leave it in the description. Please do check out his older videos, because you'll probably see me disconnecting with my old gamer tag. But anyway, what was I talking about last? Oh yes, I was talking about Dark Souls 2. I think one of the last things I ever did in Dark Souls 2 before moving on to Dark Souls Remastered was, I think it was me trying to do Dark Lurker, because I spent like 2 hours doing Dark Lurker, as I was a dark build, so I had to completely get all of these new sorceries and staffs just so that I could do the boss fight with normal magic. Because I used to use things like Dark Orb. I don't remember, like the Hex Resonant. I think that might be what it's called. The one where every time you cast it with a chime, it takes away some souls. And depending on which version of it, but I remember the highest one you can use is Climax, which takes all of your souls. But that was a really good one. So obviously I did Dark Lurker because that was pretty much the only other boss I had left to do that I wanted to do. I was like, right, well now I want to move on to Dark Souls Remastered. But I didn't actually get Dark Souls Remastered until about June 2020. But I tell you, I think I have the most nostalgia for my Dark Souls 1 playthrough. Because, you know, obviously by this point I'd had easily 6 months experience of playing Souls games, and I felt completely ready to do this game. But when I think of Dark Souls 1, I think of a time approaching the summer, you know, because I used to do a lot of carp fishing with my dad around that time. I associate like that halfway point as being just so much fun, and towards the end of the summer that year before I had to start going back into school physically. Mate, I do have my Dark Souls 1 account still, but I didn't restart a profile at all on Dark Souls 1, unlike Dark Souls 3 and 2. My main account just became my main account from the moment I created it. And I was really confused at first. I was like, why can't I warp? This is so weird. Is my game bugged? Nah, bro. That was just a part of the game, and then I had to teach myself that, because obviously Dark Souls 3 and 2 were quite lenient with the bonfires. I think we can all agree on that. But honestly, I remember on my first playthrough, I was trying to go for a Giant Dad build because that's what I actually, that's just pretty much what I wanted to be, Giant Dad. Because that's what really inspired me to get Dark Souls Remastered. I thought, wow, that actually looks like such a fun build to do. You know, being pretty underleveled while still being a monster who just has a lot of poise and all of that. I thought it was brilliant. And I became Giant Dad, and I still have a video. I still might even have a few videos up on my channel right now from June, July 2020 of me as Giant Dad doing invasions. What a time. And then as we came into August of 2020, this was more so the time I really started to try and consistently do YouTube videos, because I had my phone break, which is actually how I edit pretty much all of my videos. I don't have a computer or anything that I edit on. I edit them either in Share Factory on my PlayStation, depending on what the type of video is, or I download them to my phone and then edit them in iMovie. This was around the time I really started doing YouTube, but that did start more so in around May or June. But I wasn't really gaining a lot of attention for what I was doing. So then I turned to methods like going onto Reddit and promoting myself on there, and then immediately deleting my posts because everybody didn't like my videos. But because I just didn't really know how to promote myself. And I still am conflicted on how I should promote myself, you know? I've tried pretty much mostly doing YouTube Shorts and TikTok. However, when I post to TikTok, people don't really bother to go to your YouTube to check your channel out. Whereas if you do YouTube Shorts, people can go, oh right, and then immediately go to your channel and subscribe. Because around the time I was doing this, YouTube Shorts wasn't a thing, and I didn't really want to do anything on TikTok. And I don't even really like to think about how I was as a person 2 years ago. Because I was not a very likeable person at all. I'm surprised I even had many friends. But oh well, that time of history is done. And my time of consistently making YouTube videos is no more. But I started having a bit of a burnout on Souls games in about September 2020, because in mid-August I got Dead by Daylight for the first time because it had just become cross-platform and my sister wanted to play with me, so I got it on there, and then I started getting taught how to play Dead by Daylight, and then Dead by Daylight became my main game for about a year and a half. So I was mostly playing Dead by Daylight instead of any Dark Souls games. You know, which was fun because I was enjoying Dead by Daylight. Obviously, I don't play Dead by Daylight anymore because, again, it's just trying to take games less seriously. And because I used to take, again, Dead by Daylight quite competitively. And I would get all worked up over really small things. You know, it's alright though. Because I'm not like that anymore. So, by this point, I was not really playing many Souls games. I was just trying to play Dead by Daylight and get better and better and better and better. And I mean, I thought it was fine, but you know, I said to myself, like, I was always going to have a soft spot for playing Souls games, and I still do. Dark Souls 3, the Dark Souls games arguably just changed me as a person and taught me to better myself with video games and to push through when something gets hard. Oh man, I haven't even talked about Bloodborne. For me, Bloodborne was the Souls game I never really liked for a while. It wasn't the fast-paced action of the combat. Like, you know, that's normally how I played my Souls games anyway, which was quite fast-paced when I was in a boss fight and like being very aggressive. But you know, just the Bloodborne combat felt off to me. But you know, the first copy of Bloodborne I did actually buy was in early March 2020. I bought it from the same CEX shop. However, like, my disc was bugged, so when it like it was just weird, because whenever I would download the game, whenever I created a new save file and I quit out of the game, it would just not let me go back onto that save file. It was a really weird bug. So then when I came to revisit Bloodborne, you'll just see a bunch of the same character, because I tried because I had to like restart my character every single time, and because of that I had to go get a refund, because they had a 24 or 48 hour policy at the time, which said you can return a game within 24 hours or 48. So then we had to go back to the shop the next day and get a refund on it. Then 6 months after that, I was like, alright, let's give Bloodborne another go. And I went to the same shop with my mum and she bought it for me. But what was really cool was the guy at the till. He was talking to me about how good of a game Bloodborne was. He's like, you're gonna love this game, man, trust me. And Mum was like, oh, what's it about? I was like, this is one of the hardest games of all time. Something like that. I was like, trust me, Mum, I'm really good at these games. And he's like, oh, I'm sure you are, mate. So I came home. I think I played Bloodborne for a few hours. And then, again, I just put it on my shelf and never played it because I was too busy focusing on playing Dead by Daylight. And to be honest, I kind of wish I spent less time playing Dead by Daylight and more time improving at Souls games. Because as much as I like Dead by Daylight, I don't particularly like it anymore. You know, Dead by Daylight did create a lot of memories, just like Dark Souls. I met so many friends I met whole communities through Dead by Daylight. If you're in the Dead by Daylight community, you probably know of the streamer and YouTuber Potato Legion. I met him at 900 subscribers. And for a good while, I would go onto his live streams and I would just watch them. Because he was like a streamer, because I've never really been a fan of watching live streams. However, like, Potato Legion was different. You know, I followed him on and subscribed to him on everything that I could. And then I just watched him for like weeks and weeks on end, and then one day I just stopped, and then I was like, oh, I wonder how Potato Legion's doing, and then he was up to like 10-20,000 subscribers. I was like, what on earth is going on? And now he's easily like he's such a recognizable person in the Dead by Daylight community now. And it made me so happy see him go from 900 to 100k in the span of not even a year. It's crazy to imagine what would have happened if I had just stuck with him all the time, and gradually progressed, saw him grow. Because like every month or so, I would just go back to check on his channel. Oh, he's gained another 10,000 subscribers. How brilliant is that? You know, all of these memories I made. I remember one live stream I was on with Potato Legion was when I'd ordered a takeaway, and it was taking about like 2.5 hours to arrive, and I was talking about how hungry I was in the live stream. And then we were having a joke about how I was going to starve to death in approximately 25 minutes. Sorry, I was just having a sip of water. Better. Oh mate, I'm getting off topic. I'm talking about Dead by Daylight too much. And this is about Souls. So I think we were up to... I left Bloodborne on my shelf because I was too busy playing Dead by Daylight, which is true. So once... it got to a point where I was like, well, I don't play Bloodborne, I might as well sell it. And I just went for a phase of buying and reselling Bloodborne over and over and over again. Until ultimately I just sold it for good. And I don't really need to buy it again because it's on the PlayStation Plus collection on my PS5. So I don't have to really worry about that, to be honest. I actually only really finished my first Bloodborne playthrough this year. In fact, I only really beat it about 3 months ago. Because one day during the summer, I got bored because, you know, I was at home, I wasn't really doing anything, so then I just installed Bloodborne. And I finished off my playthrough because I was already about halfway through the game. The last boss I remember doing was the Witches of Hemwick. So I finished the game there, and then like I realised, like, hey, I actually like this combat system. And then I played it for a little bit after, and I still do occasionally hop on Bloodborne, but it's not my go-to Souls game by any means. And then we come to Demon's Souls. I would be lying if I said the main reason I got a PS5 was to play I wouldn't be... Oh, I've lost it. What I'm trying to say is I wouldn't have gotten a PS5 if Demon's Souls wasn't, you know, one of the launch titles. I didn't get my PS5 until late 2021 because I saved up enough money to buy one, and then I was off school that day because I actually had a chest infection, and I was taking a little while to recover from that. And then I woke up and then saw that they still had them in stock like 40 minutes after they restocked on our company because everybody had gone to work. I did wake up quite late that day. Oh, sorry. I'm making every weird bodily function today. But, you know, got my PlayStation. It came with an extra controller, actually, which I haven't taken out of the box because I don't need it yet. But I find it pretty mental how I'm coming up to a year with my PS5. Because it only feels like I've had it for around 6 or 8 months. And time's been going by really fast over the past year. Clearly. And the day after my PS5 arrived, I went into that same CEX shop and then I bought Demon's Souls because that was the cheapest place I could find at the time to buy it for, which was around £30. Mate, I just non-stop played Demon's Souls for a week straight. That was the only game I would be playing. I just wasn't going outside, you know, I wasn't really... I wasn't talking with friends much. I was just playing Demon's Souls. And I went into it with zero spoilers, luckily. Because I told my friends who had played it while I was still on PS4. I specifically told them to not spoil anything for me. And like true kings, they did not spoil anything. So luckily I went into the story with no knowledge of what was going on. And I was trying to work out the lore for myself. Now, again, Demon's Souls isn't necessarily my go-to Souls game, but I can appreciate it for what it is. Obviously, I am playing the remake of it, not the original PS3 version. However, I am intending on playing the original PS3 version soon. You know, if I can get enough money to buy a PS3, who knows? Well, it's not as if I could record it and upload it to YouTube, because, you know, can't actually do that because I haven't got a computer that I can do that with. But yeah, I beat Demon's Souls in either 6 days or a week, because I think my main weapon was the meat cleaver. Because every single Souls game that I've played, I've always been a strength build. Because I thought it was cool, you know, just going around and hacking and slashing at people with your sword. Oh god, that was a bit of saliva that took a little while to swallow. I did say that this was unfiltered and unscripted. I'm just gonna not cut any of this because I think it's just better to get my raw feelings out without trimming it down. Let the people hear. How long have... Man, I've been talking a while. I've just checked how long. I've been recording 37 minutes. I mean, that just shows how much I can talk about Souls games for, and anything that isn't a Souls game. Let's go back onto Demon's Souls then. Now with Demon's Souls, I went into it really overhyping what it was. Obviously, the graphics on Demon's Souls are some of the best I think I've ever seen in any game that I've played. No doubt about that in my mind whatsoever. But in terms of what it had to offer, I thought it was quite lacking in comparison to all of the games I'd play prior to Demon's Souls. I'd play through all of the Dark Souls games, which were just better and better versions of one another. Dark Souls 2 may be an exception to some people, but to me, I saw it was an improvement in many ways over Dark Souls 1. Although obviously they did have certain elements like adaptability, which I don't like. And then also with Demon's Souls, I didn't like how many gimmick fights there were. I thought that it was just quite lazy. You know, Dragon God, Adjudicator. Even Old Hero, if you know about the Thief Ring. It just felt like you could do all of these bosses super easily. To the point they didn't even really feel like bosses, they just felt like just clear this level out really quickly. And then do a boss that requires 0 effort to kill. But at the end of the day, I was just so hyped to play the game, you know, that I've been wanting to play since I saw it get announced on the PS5 Direct in June 2020. Because I was watching the live stream, you know, when they announced what the console would look like and all of the games that would come out with it, like Deathloop, Bugsnax, Demon's Souls. Because I remember on the PS5 Direct, I thought that Yeah, I don't know. Is it direct? But I remember like seeing the Demon Souls trailer, like the remastered version of it, because my friend had been talking to me about Elden Ring, and that it was yet to have like another update. I thought, oh, well, perhaps this might be Elden Ring, because I'd never seen the opening intro for Dark Souls, no, Demon Souls before. Well, I mean, I didn't know what it looked like, so I just assumed this was Elden Ring. And we get to the end, and then I saw it was Demon Souls, and then I got even more excited because this was like a Souls game I'd never played before, but I'd always wanted to play. At the end of the day, it did leave me a bit disappointed, but I should have really expected that coming into the first entry in the Souls series. And for a game released in 2009, I think it holds up incredibly well. Especially a lot more than a lot of other games from that late 2000s era. And then we're gonna come to the final game in the Souls experience that I had, that being Elden Ring. I loved Elden Ring on my first playthrough. I thought the world was so big. I thought the world was so vast. I just didn't know where to start. I was so excited. I stayed up until midnight to play it on the same day that it came out. I had school. Me and my friend, we stayed up until midnight to play it, and I was like, well, I'm only gonna play for an hour because I had school the next day. But I went around Limgrave. Like, to be honest, because I normally always spend at least 15 minutes customizing my character. I tried like keeping my character customization down to a minimum, just so that I had time to at least get an hour's worth of gameplay in. And I was just so mesmerized by like the beautiful colors of Limgrave. That's a wow moment in a Souls game I don't think I've had since probably my first ever experience with a Souls game, and feeling how good it was to beat it. I tell you, I've never had an experience like it before. And again, just like with Demon Souls and all of the other Souls games before that, it became the main game that I played for so long. I remember getting my first invasion kill and feeling so good about myself. But I don't even think it was like I could really count it as a real invasion, because I was using the red effigy because I thought that was how you invaded people in the game. But I didn't realize you had to do White Mask of Ares questline. No, and then I think I had 60 hours racked into the game by the time I'd beaten it. I beat Elden Ring in about a week because, again, I was just so obsessed with it, because luckily we were heading into a half term around the time Elden Ring came out. So I would have like a week or two to play it and, experience it without having to worry about school. But my thing with Elden Ring is, like, once you beat it, sometimes it can just feel too daunting to try and start a new invasion playthrough where you want to do invasions. It can feel quite overwhelming. And, sometimes I don't think I have the willpower to do something like that, because it's a lot easier in a game like Dark Souls 3 than it is Elden Ring, just because Dark Souls 3 has a much more linear design. I know exactly where I need to go. But also it's probably just due in part to me having over 1,000 hours combined in the Dark Souls games alone. Elden Ring at the moment I think I only have around 150 hours in, because it's, it just feels boring to play once I'd beaten it, because you know, PvP was pretty messed up and pretty unbalanced, and that didn't really make it all that enjoyable for me, so I thought, well, I'm not going to bother stressing about it. And then I stopped doing PvP until, you know, the Bleed update came out. Oh dear, voice crack. I stopped doing PvP until the Bleed update. And then the Bleed update came out, and then I thought, oh, this is going to be a great idea for a YouTube video. So then I did a video of me with an insta bleed build, and then it was me playing Toxic, and I remember I used Rivers of Blood like for the first time, and then I literally got 3 pieces of hate mail in a row. And I was like, oh yeah, this is juicy YouTube content. And then I never made a video on it because I was lazy. Nah, but honestly, Elden Ring did feel... It felt good, you know, like on my first playthrough. That's the best way I could describe it. Again, it's just that fresh feeling of, ah, thank God this is a new Souls game for me to play. But what I liked about Elden Ring was the fact, like, it was just astonishingly beautiful. And I don't really understand where people come from when they say that the game looks ugly and that it looks low quality, because I feel like that's just nitpicking because you don't like From Software as a company. You know, it's understandable, you like Souls games might not be your forte, but you shouldn't go out of your way to completely hate on the games related to that company, saying that they're all rubbish just because you don't like them and they're not your style of gaming. For all I know, that person could love doing puzzle games. They could be in love with Unravel or games like that. Again, personally not for me. Games like, I've tried games like Resident Evil 2 and I've played through them and they're not really to my liking because I felt like they were too orientated. Puzzle orientated. There we go. But you see, I went into Resident Evil 2 expecting it to be, you know, horror game, like mostly just a horror game, but it's strategic and kind of, you know, a puzzle game. And puzzle games aren't really my kind of thing, because when I play a game, I just want to mindlessly be able to escape the real world and just live out my life as a tarnished for an hour. I don't want to have to go into my game actively thinking about how I can beat a challenge and having to play my cards right. But then I suppose that's kind of how the Dark Souls combat is. You know, you have to learn enemy movesets if you want to get good at dodging an enemy's attacks, or parrying an enemy's attacks, or riposting if you know an enemy becomes stunned at a certain time. And that's why I love Souls games. They provide me a sense of escapism and a sense of self-worth in a world where sometimes it can be too much for me. So the fact, if I always want to play a game, one of my main go-to games is Souls games. Like just any one of them. And I do intend to play through Sekiro at some point in the near future. However, again, I've not really picked up Sekiro, as I've tried it once on a friend's share play and he might have not had the best internet, and it felt like the timings and everything were off, so then I couldn't deflect or riposte an enemy's attack correctly, and then it felt frustrating because I just wasn't really getting to grips with the combat. But I suppose that could just be due in part to the lag from the share play. But who knows? Someday I am going to play through Sekiro and I'm going to document my whole playthrough on this channel. Well, I mean, I guess that was just my little ramble about why I love Souls games so much. You know, there was no real purpose for me making this video. I just wanted to make it because I wanted a way to get my thoughts across about how I feel about Dark Souls and the impact it's had on my life. Because I think a lot of people can stand with me and say Dark Souls helped them through the lockdowns. Oh, honestly. Because it gave me something to do when I would have normally just gone on Warzone. Instead of going on Warzone, I would think, oh, maybe I can come up with a new build idea. Maybe I can do some parrying practice on the enemies at Archdragon Peak or something like that, you know? It's just that feeling of self-worth that Dark Souls games gave me during the lockdown that made me want to keep playing them, because it's such an addictive combat cycle. To me, it feels like skateboarding, you know? You get punished and you get hurt when trying to learn to do something, you know? Trying to learn to dodge an enemy's attack and getting hit is like when you're trying to do a kickflip or something and then you fall over on your board. What do? No, you don't quit, you get back up and then you try it again. And the mentality that I had with Dark Souls bosses has transferred over into a lot of stuff that I do in the real world. You know, if I'm struggling at school, or on a worksheet that I'm doing, I don't just give up, I try and persevere. And it's about how much of an influence Dark Souls had on me. Honestly. I would not be the person I am today if it wasn't for Dark Souls coming into my life and changing it. And as I conclude this long video, I would just like to give a thank you to the friend that introduced me to Dark Souls. He was also actually the one who encouraged me to start uploading videos again on YouTube. Because the last thing I really did on YouTube by that point was do like occasional like meme edits from when I was a stupid dumb little baby. And also like my old PewDiePie versus T-Series live streams, because I wanted to get easy views and subscribers, which probably wasn't best in the longevity of everything. I moved on from all of that and I just tried growing my channel normally by playing Souls games, and it was all thanks to this one friend who originally introduced me to Souls games in the first place. If it wasn't for him, I may have never even bothered trying to do YouTube for Dark Souls. You know? It's quite amazing. Well, thank you again for any person who clicked on this video and made it the whole way through. You know, I'm not really expecting anyone to make it the whole way through. And someone's more than likely skipped the end point and listening to this. But if you really want to understand my account of how I feel about Dark Souls, I'm probably going to make another video like this discussing which Souls games I would recommend to a new player. That's a video idea I've genuinely been considering for a little while. But I've been more so focused on, you know, I did start another channel, but to be honest, that died off because I was trying to do live streaming on it, but the only reviewer I really had was my mate from school, because I told him about my channel, and you know, like I tried YouTube Shorts, I tried videos and that, on, and none of it was really working. You know, I would maybe occasionally have 2 or maybe even 3 viewers at one time. But, nah. Just it wasn't really working out, so then I stopped uploading on that channel. And we are even approaching the 1 hour mark, which just, it doesn't feel like I've been talking for 1 hour. It feels like I've only been talking half an hour. Well, all I can really say is, if you genuinely have made it the whole way through this video, I appreciate it so much that you took an hour out of your life to listen to me ramble about my own personal experiences with Souls games. I may in future make a video regarding how to pick the right Souls game for a new player, but I highly doubt I'll have the energy for that. Well, I mean, thank you for watching. Just clicking on this video, you know, it gives me support. Thank you very much.